Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah with All Things Aging, and I have Danielle with me, as well as Ted and Suzanne, owners of Twin Cities Central and Caring Transitions. Thank you so much to the both of you for coming out today. We really appreciate it. We can't wait to learn more about your process and what you have to bring to the table. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of an introduction to yourselves.
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having us. We're honored to be here and be a part of this important conversation. So, real quick, Caring Transitions Twin Cities Central. We are the nation's largest, most trusted provider in senior relocation, downsizing, estate sale, and home cleanout services. So, we help with anything from packing, moving, resettling, downsizing decisions, and then, of course, what to do with the things left over that families no longer want to need. And that's where a home cleanout and estate sale come into play. So we're honored to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for the invite.
Of course, we're so happy to have you both here.
Yeah.
Can you guys share a little bit behind your business and what inspired you to senior moving and downsizing auction company?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually fell in love with this company 15, 16 years ago when we were living in Maryland. We started off secondhand reselling and we started buying things from this auction site called, at that time, it was called
CT Online Auction.
CT Online Auctions. Imagine typing that in www.ctonlineauctions.com. And Suzanne would bring home these really interesting pieces, buffets, tables, and we're like, wow, this place is amazing. And I'm like, where are you getting this stuff? And Suzanne was like, I'm not exactly sure where it comes from. So one auction we're noticing on one of the lots, there were a bunch of walkers and canes. And I'm like, where is this stuff coming from? So when she won her item, she went to pick up, she came back so excited, like, oh my God, this company, guess what they do? And I'm like, what do they do? And then she said, they help seniors downsize, relocate, and then they sell their stuff for them to help them offset their costs. We fell in love right then. I was like, can we do this? We had children. They were like babies. We're like, impossible. Start a business with babies. So
We daydreamed
we
for
daydreamed a long time.
a decade. And it was always just something on the back of our mind. But with young kids, you focus on what's stable, paying the bills. So fast forward to 2020 when COVID hit. And I don't know any life that wasn't disrupted. And we certainly were not unique in that journey. And so with our whole lives uprooted, the kids being homeschooled, we knew that it was a point in our journey where we could really just set the trajectory forward in doing something different. Ted, having a background in sales, he just said, if we're going to get into doing our own business, it needs to be meaningful work. I need to sell something that I can really get behind and it moves me intrinsically. And so it kind of all unfolded a little bit serendipitously in that we were researching different franchise opportunities and came across Caring Transitions. And then we were like, wait a second, that was that online auction platform that we were using 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it just unfolded from there. And we prayed a lot on what our path forward was going to be. And if this was meant for us, we just asked God to guide us in that journey. And we haven't looked back since. So
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. What makes you guys different from other companies?
well, there's a lot that makes us different from other auction houses or move management companies. And first and foremost, Caring Transitions is a national franchise. We have over 400 owners across the nation. So that really sets us apart in that we have a lot of continuity in our brand and support all across the nation. With that, we're also a one-stop shop. So when it comes to managing people's personal property, I mean, that's something that's all within one house. So a family doesn't have to go to a downsizer to solve that component, go to a move manager to deal with an upcoming transition, a home cleanout company to deal with removing the non-sellable things, and then of course an auction house to send the value. So having a one-stop shop, one point of contact throughout the whole process is one of the biggest things that sets us apart on top of being a national franchise. Anything else to add? Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about senior moving into the downsizing process.
Mhm.
So what's the first step for a senior and their family? How does that work? What do they need from you? How does that process look?
I think that that first step is just making the call
Mhm.
making the call to get the free consultation. So we need to understand the story. What's the story? What do you need? That's really the first step, because as we all know, every house there's a bedroom, there's a bathroom. It's all the same essentially, but there's always unique features like within every home. It's the same with every client that we work with. Very unique circumstances, whether family is helping, whether they have support, is the family out of town, what's your timeline? All of it can seem extremely overwhelming, and then it's just being able to start with that initial conversation of what do you need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Once we can understand a story, then it allows us to create an individualized approach
Mm-hmm.
to meet the needs of that family situation. So no two family situation is alike, and so being able to customize an approach to meet them with where they're at, I think, is the most important thing. And you have to figure out what their story is, what their needs
Yeah.
are.
Mm-hmm.
And I would
Yeah.
imagine you guys probably see a lot of relief come across people's faces, and they
Mhm.
probably think that they can move now a lot sooner once they've kind of ripped that band-aid off. Or at least certainly working with you guys, that's been kind of like what I've seen as an outsider looking in. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That they're just like, I didn't even know that this could be possible for us to move within a month or a couple weeks or
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yes.
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
On that topic, what is like the biggest emotional hurdle that seniors and their families kind of face? And I know that you guys, this is probably like the biggest one I would imagine that you really do face, is just
Yeah.
getting past that
Mm-hmm.
for people.
Yeah, I think we have a couple. I know I have my personal favorites, and then Suzanne has hers. One of mine is the getting over the emotional value over the stuff, the item.
Mhm.
Yeah, understanding at a point that we understand that coffee mug isn't just a coffee mug, but for that client, they're like, oh, this was dad's mug. He drank out of it every
Right.
day, sat right there. I remember when I bought it. And realizing that value can stay with you. So getting rid of that item is very difficult for the client,
Mm-hmm.
and just getting them over that hurdle of we can take pictures of the stuff. You can take a picture with it. Let's take a bunch of pictures with this item,
Mm-hmm.
and then let's put that in a digital picture frame, and then you can
Yeah.
always see
See
it.
it.
But
Mm-hmm.
do you really need 83 coffee mugs?
I have trouble with that.
Yeah.
You know, when I moved, I'm like, why do I have
Yeah.
20 coffee cups and I
Yeah.
barely drink coffee? It's like, you know, and so I can imagine.
Yeah.
And I think too, I mean, when we enter into a client's life, it is one of the most pivotal, life changing events that they have going on.
Mhm.
So the emotions are very high.
I bet.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it's not wanted. We're the
Yeah.
necessary evil that they have to enlist in services because either a life triggering event took place and they're required to move, or the kids are really pushing for this, or there's a death
Yeah.
and the family needs to clear out the home. Sometimes there's proactive folks out there but even with a proactive client, they still are going through a grief and a loss process.
Mhm.
They might be making really healthy decisions to make a transition take place, but it doesn't mean they want to.
Right.
Yeah.
And so inviting us into their home to have that conversation, we don't take lightly. And we know that this is a very, very delicate space in their life. And so
Yeah.
the emotions are high. And I think what we find often, and why I think it's such a great point kind of leading into that, the property and the stuff, is because we find that emotions are often displaced to attach onto the things.
Yeah, I bet.
Right? It's not like the things always are that meaningful, but
Right.
if my identity was in cooking
Right.
and I have this elaborate collection of cookbooks on a shelf,
Mhm.
but in my new kitchen space, I just don't have room for this whole collection, then am I losing a piece of that identity by not being able to take all those belongings? So really understanding their story and just where they're at in their journey kind of allows us to tap into how to emotionally navigate the things that we know are tugging at their heartstrings.
Mhm.
There's so much emotion. I feel like we're therapists oftentimes
Yeah, I bet.
in
Yeah,
consultations.
And some, I mean, just going into homes, like they have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you even get through all that? Like
Yeah.
with families, like everything. And how do you decide like what you can do with this versus this, or it has to take time?
Yeah.
I was going to say there's another piece of that where they're realizing for the first time that this might be their last move.
Yeah.
So acknowledging the fact that I'm no longer independent,
Yeah.
I can no longer drive.
Yep.
A lot of times they're not willing to face or look at that. So when you're asking, do you still need these fishing poles? Yeah, I need the fishing poles. And they know they're not going fishing
Yeah.
ever again. But because of just getting them over that hump of realizing, we often tell them congratulations on making this decision to move forward. We understand, and literally to put it out on the table, we understand this might be your last move.
Yeah.
And we appreciate, we're so grateful that you can make this. You should congratulate yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Congratulate that win for sure.
Yeah.
Once we have a client that is ready to move forward, the first thing we need to do in order to process through those items that are not coming with them
Yep.
is truly to get acknowledgement that they have defined
Mhm.
and identified the items that they need and love. We can't possibly go in and make decisions of what is sellable and not sellable
Mhm.
until we understand that the client or the family, loved ones of the client have defined what they want to need. The last thing we want to do is go into a space and
Mhm.
inadvertently sell something or mark something for donation
Mhm.
that a family still wanted. So that is the key, that they have to get to that point. And we do all of that preliminary work through downsizing and through that move
And
process.
and then you're coming back and
Correct.
working with like families.
Yep.
Okay.
I think of it like a phase 1 and a phase 2.
Right.
So in
right.
that first phase, if they're a total solution
Mhm.
client, then they are going through some downsizing component, whether they enlist in our services or just do the work themselves and then move. And then afterwards, what do you, are you ready to let go of the rest of the things?
Mhm.
Really, when you get into the nitty gritty of like how that process unfolds, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And we only see the beginning, like,
Yeah.
hey, then you move, they need this. But
Yeah.
like how long that process could take
Yeah.
Yeah.
could be a long time.
But we definitely know the triggers too. And on that note, like what advice would you give to if let's say my mom was dragging her feet? What advice would you give to me to be able to speak to her about potentially downsizing?
I love that question so much because it speaks to, I think, just the gap that we have with just generational conversations, right?
Mhm.
It's a very delicate dance. Our parents, they raised us,
Mhm.
right? They should be honored. What they did to get to where they are today, it doesn't want to go, you don't want to not recognize that. And I think sometimes by stepping in
Mhm.
and becoming the parent, we, unconsciously insert ourselves then as the parent to them.
Mhm.
Then they feel no longer
Defensive.
empowered, right?
Defensive. out of
Defensive.
control.
Their dignity
Yeah.
is lost. So I think advice on how adult children can kind of enter into conversations would just be starting with, Mom, I'd like to work through some of this items with you. Are there things that you've thought about passing down to me that you would like to get my opinion on?
Mhm.
Are there items that you've thought about passing down to other family members? Maybe start there if you need to get the ball rolling. Our parents want to see their things
Mhm.
Yeah.
repurposed, right? What they don't want to hear is, oh my gosh, Mom, you have so much stuff. You need to get rid of your stuff.
Yeah.
How can you have all of this?
Yeah.
Why do you still have this? It's judgment, judgment, judgment.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to steer the conversation around compassion, empathy, and empowerment.
Yeah.
So ensuring that
Keeping it positive.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
their generation, things were passed down to them.
Mhm.
So that's their thought and their mindset is I'm saving it and holding it for you. And then we're like, I don't want it.
yeah,
But that's not, we can't say that.
Yeah.
What we say is, you know what, I'd love to have that. Donate it.
Yeah.
But you're not
Do you get
thinking-
I was just going to ask, do you guys see a lot of that? Like, oh, we'll take this. And then
Oh, absolutely.
they go into maybe a community and then the family's like, yeah, take it all.
All
Because
the
I hear
time.
that a lot.
All the
I'm
time.
like, they'll help you with things you want to keep, this, that. And they're like, I don't want to keep anything. I'm like, oh,
'Cause it's hurting their feelings. 'Cause
Yeah.
we're just in a different generation. Obviously, we're working with the Depression era
Yep.
and the baby boomers where they didn't have anything.
Mhm.
So keeping and holding on to every single
Yeah.
thing was normal.
yeah.
Right.
and
Right.
honorable.
And if it's
honorable.
broke, you fix it. You don't throw it away.
If it's
Yep.
broke, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I don't know how to mend holes in my socks. So
Yeah.
I asked her the other day, can you fix this?
Yeah.
She's like, yes, give it to me.
Trash. I like that.
This last Thanksgiving, we had, I would say, a passionate conversation
Oh,
with his father, my father-in-law,
he can't watch this podcast.
yeah, about those things, right? And we hit a little bit of a
Yeah.
of a sore spot because he was like, "You guys just want me to throw everything away," and we're like, "No, we
He
don't."
said it was like losing a part of his body.
Yeah,
So you throwing it away is like
Losing an arm.
losing an arm. But it also made us realize at that point how in depth these items,
Mhm.
how they're interwoven and ingrained
Yeah.
Yeah.
in that.
but we also, I think, were able to break things down a little bit by simply saying what you hold value to is a perceived value, and that has validity to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that that's our perceived value.
Right.
So the Hummels that you brought over from Germany and that you still have in your grandfather clock are super meaningful
Yeah.
and have perceived value for you. And we love that you love them. But to expect us to
Right.
inherit that perceived value
Yeah.
is
Don't have it.
it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
It would be like us saying that 1980s boombox, don't throw it away because we
Right.
have such a perceived
Yeah.
value around it.
Yeah.
Double cassette tape.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I can record my music on. Don't toss it.
Yeah. Well, my grandpa passed away a couple of years ago, and my grandma, she still kind of holds on to a lot of stuff. And they live like a minute from the Canadian border. He has about like 10 accordions, 10 violins.
He needs all
He
that.
was in a band.
Danielle.
So she will not, and she has not wanted to get rid of it. And I'm like, she wants the kids to kind of
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah,
kids want it.
yeah.
And they can play it.
I know, because
Yeah.
kids just love playing the accordion.
Yeah.
Yes.
and they know how to. So it's like, but yeah, so that is
Yeah.
a big thing.
Yeah.
Oh god.
What
do-
type? Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, what types of things do you guys see that typically are big sellers? And I'm sure it's
Mhm.
different all the time, but what is kind of like, oh yes, that for sure would go and sell.
Well, what's fun about the secondhand market is that it's always evolving and changing based on supply and demand.
Yeah.
Some things that are currently in today's market would be like the vintage Pyrex bowls, the
Mhm.
nesting bowls
Yeah.
that come in all the fun colors. Those
Yep.
are still very hot and trendy.
Mhm.
All your mid-century modern furniture, as I like to tell our seniors, just furniture.
Yeah.
That was in. It wasn't mid-century when they
Right.
bought it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you call them mid-century?
Yeah,
Mhm.
we still see like that bohemian mid-century style very much in. So if it has clean lines, straight legs,
Mhm.
no embellishments, we say no swirly whirlies, right?
Yeah.
Not the Chippendale or the Duncan Fife, like those are out. But furniture wise,
Wood.
yeah,
Yeah.
dark wood is a
Mhm.
no. But you also just have,
Crystal, china,
not so much.
all
Yeah.
the things. Yeah. All
The
the
Borsky
things that-
crystal though,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
There we
still,
go.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it really, there could never be a comprehensive list of all that is in.
Mhm.
And
'Cause it's evolving.
it is always evolving. And I think too, you can't say that generally, oh, furniture doesn't sell well. Well,
Mhm.
it depends on the furniture. What's the make? What's the model?
Sure.
You know, does it have dovetail drawers? Is it Ethan Allen? If it is Ethan Allen, though, is it dark wood? Is it lighter
Right.
wood? There's so much.
Is it
that
honey
goes-
oak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that matters.
All that
Mhm.
matters for sure. But we definitely have I mean, that's the cool thing about Carrying Transitions is that with 400 offices across the nation, we have close to 1 million bidders. Those are shoppers on our online auction.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all that shopping provides a significant amount of data
Mm-hmm.
that we are pulling on weekly to figure out how the market is constantly evolving and changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by having all of that data of how much something sells and how the grouping and how things should be labeled, that allows us to maximize proceeds for our client, the senior,
Sure.
in their things and knowing what's trending and not trending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On that note, too, is there, and sorry to interrupt you, Ted, is
Yeah.
there anything that it's like, nope, that's never going to sell? That's like a typical item besides like a mattress where you're like,
Yes.
just set it on fire. I don't know.
Encyclopedia sets.
Oh.
Yes.
No Encyclopedia
No,
Britannica.
they're not
No.
going to sell.
Yeah.
No, not going to sell. There's a ton. Wingback chairs are no longer sellable. Clear glass, just plain clear glass sets.
Generally speaking.
Generally.
But there was a great set that had a Playboy emblem on it and they sold very well.
But those aren't, yeah.
Right.
those aren't-
Clear,
those
yeah.
aren't just clear
Yeah.
glass.
Like collectibles, somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other set? The one that was, what brand was that? Not Tom Ford.
Tiffany. There was a Tiffany clear
The
glass that
Tiffany
sold real
clear
well.
glass set
Yeah.
was
Mm-hmm.
sold.
So there's always outliers and exceptions
Mm-hmm.
to everything in the resale business because there's uniqueness in
file
things.
cabinet
Yeah.
right now. Not a big seller.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
imagine. I would imagine. Where am I going to keep all my stuff?
I know.
I need a tickle file. Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens to things that, like items that don't sell?
Yeah. The cool thing with CT bids is that 99% or more of the items we list sell.
That's nice.
So we rarely experience things that don't sell because of our business model and the platform that we use.
Mhm.
That again makes us really different than like a standard auction house in
Sure.
that way.
Mm-hmm.
Inevitably, you might have things from time to time that don't sell. We could also try to be, if a client has a large furniture item that is on the border of selling or not selling, but the cost to get rid of it outweighs the cost of being able to sell it. Well, why not try to sell it because it's going to be less expensive for them?
Mm-hmm.
In those situations when we make that on the fence decision and for whatever reason it doesn't sell, then we end up donating. And if you want to talk about our partners, our donation partners too.
Yeah, we use Bridging Legacy and Salvation Army as our donation partners, and these entities all do tremendous things in the community. So
ACBC Food Shelf.
ACBC Food Shelf is another one out in Anoka, and when we do donations, we want it to go to something that really is making a difference in the community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, fostering sustainability is one of our pillars, and being able to partner with local donation centers that are doing good work in the community allows us to do both, right? It allows us to foster that sustainability, keep as much as we can out of the landfill.
that process when we come into the home after they've moved and family has taken the items, we're splitting all the tangible personal property into two categories. It's either sellable or it's not. If it's not sellable, it gets broken up into three categories. It's personal, which we don't throw away, but we can't donate and we can't dispose until we ensure that the client has
Doesn't
seen
need it.
that personal item. Maybe a photograph has fallen behind a dresser drawer,
Right.
things like that, where we are going to set those aside. If it's not personal, it's still usable, but it's not going to be curated for our auction, then those will be donatable. And then if it has outlived its use and its value,
Rip stains.
Right.
tears.
rips, stains, tears. If you have pets or cats or dogs or smoking in the home, and those signs are evident on the furniture, then those will be better suited for disposal. So we split them into those two categories, and then we remove all of that. So what's been curated to sell, 99% of it will sell on the auction.
That's really
Yeah.
good. That's a high number. Didn't
Yeah,
expect
we're
that,
really
like,
proud of that
honestly.
number.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really great, especially for those people that are looking to recoup costs too.
Mhm.
Because I feel like I know when I'm talking about stuff like that's a huge thing that people are like, "Oh, really? I didn't know that we could use that to pay for like the moving, etc."
Yeah.
Mhm.
On that note, are there any red flags that you feel people should watch out for in regards to companies that do online auctions or help to move seniors, etc.?
Yeah,
Definitely.
there's a lot. There's a lot that we've learned. I'm going to start with the estate sale piece. People that do in there are some companies, I'm not going to say any names, that when they do an estate sale, they'll have in their clause in their fine print that yes, they're going to empty the house, but if the item doesn't sell, it goes to them. So sometimes they are priced overpriced
Oh,
to ensure they don't sell. Then
so
the
they get it.
person they get it, they
wow.
take it, and they can resell it
Mm-hmm.
because within that, I'm going to
Sure.
get your house empty. It's guaranteed, but if it doesn't sell,
Mhm.
I get to
Take
keep those
advantage.
Yeah.
keep those items. So they
Yeah.
take advantage. That's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I think it's such a good question because auctions are an unregulated
Yeah.
industry in this nation. And so, how people go about selling secondhand things, there's no compliance required
Mhm.
for that. So, when someone is vetting out someone to come into their private space and go
Mhm.
through their private
Right.
items, oh my gosh, there is so much ethics that's
Yeah.
involved in what we do. So, first thing that families need to be asking is, are you licensed, bonded, insured?
Mhm.
Right? Like, show me your
Mhm.
license.
Yeah.
Do you background check your
Yeah.
employees?
Mhm.
Every single carrying transitions across the nation, we have a compliance to have background checks with all of our employees. That's so important. And then ask how you walk through the process of auctioning their things. So, to your point, Ted, how are things priced? Okay, if it's an online auction, like for us, they're not priced.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All bids start at $1,
Yeah.
which initially is like, oh my gosh, my thing can sell for $1.
Mhm.
Well, again, we're curating an auction. We know it's going to sell, and we have a value that we know it is at
Mhm.
minimum going to get to, right?
Yeah.
But when you're asking how things are priced, why that's important is because oftentimes, if it's like a garage sale or in person auction, things are priced and then it just drives the value down, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what estate sale have you gone to where you see something for $20 and you're like, I'll give you 10,
Right.
right?
Or I'll
Mhm.
give you 30. It
Yeah.
says 20, but I'd love to pay more for it.
Yeah.
It's never happens,
Yeah.
right?
An auction, online auction, it works just like if you were to like imagine like a real in-person auction.
Right.
Like, does anybody have a 20, you have 25? So in an
Mhm.
online feature, people are placing those bids or proxy bids and driving the value up based on the demand.
Mhm.
And so you're really truly getting fair market value for the item, not a
Mhm.
perception of value,
Right.
not insured value, but you're getting
Actual.
actual fair
Mhm.
market value for the item. But that's important to ask is just how their process works.
Mhm.
Another really important question to ask is payment process,
Mm.
right? So there's a lot of auction houses that don't have as sophisticated of a system as CT Bids
Sure.
does. So they could have situations, it's very common for alternative auction houses to have issues with people paying on their items.
Mm.
Good intentions to bid, but you should be asking, okay, well, if somebody bids on my item and they don't pay for it, am I still going to be stuck with it as the client? Or what are you going to do with it as the business I'm hiring?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so knowing how that works, right? So for CT bids, anybody that is a bidder in our system is required to have a form of payment
Mm.
vaulted
Kinda like
into bids.
eBay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the minute you win the bid,
Sure. It's
our
you're
client
paid
has,
for.
their
Mhm.
client's items are paid for, that money is collected. So that's really important. And then you already said what happens to the items that doesn't sell. We never want, our goal at Carrying Transitions is to get the home cleared out.
Mhm.
So if we aren't solving that problem, then we're just creating more stress. So we have a lot of people that come to us after they tried, unfortunately, a different
Sure.
provider,
Mhm.
and then they're still stuck with the stuff.
Oh,
and that
yes.
sucks. Yeah.
And then we own a moving company. So the
Mhm.
moving aspect is something interesting, ensuring that what is your damage policy?
Mhm.
So the state of Minnesota only requires 60 cents on the pound.
Mhm.
So if I bust something that is your favorite art piece, but it only weighed a pound,
Oh.
I only have to pay you 60 cents legally. We offer a reimburse, we call it the 3 R's. It's repair, replace, reimburse.
Mhm.
Because we understand that these items, we're only in the senior space, but the items they have selected to take with them
Yeah.
are the ones that
Very
they really
important.
love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you, I mean, accidents happen.
Yeah.
It's a part of the business.
Part of the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And I have repaired, I have replaced plenty of items, but that is a red flag. It's always something that you would want to know.
Mm-hmm.
What is your damage policy?
And that
Yeah.
they'll stand behind it.
And that you stand
Correct,
behind it.
yeah.
And we don't charge anything additional
Mhm.
for that policy just because we know better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the other piece is just ensuring that moving company can show you they have cargo insurance.
Mhm.
So moving trucks driving down the road in December,
Mm-hmm.
a car drives to the intersection, T-bones the box. How much insurance do you have on that box, on
Yeah.
my stuff? Because it's not covered by standard insurance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So as a moving company, you're supposed to have X amount of cargo insurance is what it's called.
Yeah.
And so
And on the moving note as well, there's other move management companies that just have to third party out that move just because the nature of the business. And when you have to third party out moves, you do want to understand, well, what movers are being used and what is is the repair policy through them? Is it through you?
Yeah.
You make the assumption as the senior that if you come into my home and we have a consultation, that I'm doing business just with you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's why you have to ask who's handling the move component of this. And then it's not that a third party is a bad thing always,
Right.
but you do want to understand what their background checks and
I
what the things
think-
are.
Yeah.
a difference for us, this is something that I believe really stands out, is our movers are the same movers that are also doing the clean out. They're the same movers that understand what your
That's
family is
really
going
nice.
through. So the compassion is there when they're dropping off the desk and the mom says, I don't like it there.
Mhm.
Our movers are just like, they're
Sorry.
very understanding of
Yeah.
like, yeah, where would you like me to move
Yeah.
it? And they're just very eager to, because they know what's happening. They
Mm.
understand what's going on.
Mhm.
They don't have a problem with dealing with incontinence. If the bed has urine on it and stains, they're covering it up so that when it goes into the house or to the independent living or wherever they're going, we're not exposing or
Mhm.
shaming.
Give them some
and
dignity.
We're giving
Yeah.
them dignity. We're not saying anything weird
Right.
or awkward. We know how to
Mhm.
work with the movers know how to work with clients that are suffering from mental decline or any type of cognitive impairment because this is all they do. They just
Mhm.
I turn down moves for just like if we were moving, I'm not taking that as a client.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a little bit different.
Tell us about the most memorable move or family that you've worked with.
Good or bad? Like
Yeah.
Most memorable. It could be good or bad.
There's so
So many.
many that come to mind. Again, I mean, we get sometimes a day with these clients and sometimes a few months. And so lots of hugs and journey. Yeah. In that journey between, but I could think of specifically,
Fun stuff.
yeah, yeah, one client who her mother had passed away a year prior.
Mhm.
She was moving her father into memory care because he got into a car with a stranger to go take money out of a bank.
Oh.
And that was the last straw.
Yeah.
And said, nope, Dad, you can't be here on your own. And her brother was going through terminal cancer. And she got laid off.
Oh
So,
my
oh my gosh, boom, boom,
goodness.
boom. Just
Yeah.
terrible situation
Yeah.
that she's in. And so But her father had a beautiful home that had a lot of equity in the home. For her to be able to have some financial substance to work with. But there was also a lot of treasures to excavate and uncover. And so working with her in this journey, because of all the different emotional components involved, it was so memorable because I remember just excavating that home with our team, and we'd come across these treasures, and being able to then translate that into an image that's online, and then she's viewing and having her call and say, "Oh my gosh, Ted Suzanne, I can't believe you found my father's cowboy hat. The way you have it presented online is unbelievable." And then a few other pieces that make that story especially unique is that in this excavation process, so there was two garages, one attached and one detached. And in the detached garage, well, let me back up for a quick minute. In the beginning of the process, we always ask, of course, have you gotten everything you truly need and want? And yes, is there anything that you want us to keep an eye out for? Because we know that there might be some things still in the home that you haven't identified. And she said, I know it's a long shot, but if you guys happen to come across a ring, I'm looking for my mother's wedding ring. My dad put it in a safe place. We know cognitive decline, what a safe place can mean.
Yeah.
So she is, I know it's a long shot. Well, the last day of that excavation process, we're in the detached garage and we're going through a tool chest because we were going to sell the tool chest. But we have to excavate even as granular as the tools inside of it, right?
Yeah.
And then inside one of the drawers, in a small Altoid tin container, open that up, and there was her mother's wedding ring. So Ted called her up and he's like, "Client, you're not going to believe
Where I found it.
what we found."
Yeah.
Right? And she was like, "You found my mother's wedding ring." And she was like, "I got to tell you guys, but this is the 1 year anniversary of her death."
Oh.
And it was like, oh my gosh, it was just like waterworks everywhere.
Yeah.
But that was pretty memorable.
That
Yeah.
does give me goosebumps.
Yeah.
I had a client, Vicky, and I got a call. I came down. There wasn't many notes, just that I need help cleaning up my son's unit. So I'm thinking that, like, maybe there was something that happened anyway so I pull up and, I said, yeah. So just in the very cheery, how can I help? What's your story? How can I help? And she says, well, my son lives up there and he started a fire on accident in the stove. And when the police got there, they couldn't get in because of the amount of hoarding. And 2 days later, he self-exited right down there. He walked down the railroad tracks and self-exited.
Oh.
And immediately I was just like, oh my gosh, like,
That's a lot.
how long ago did this happen? She's like 6 days ago. And I'm just like,
Oh, that poor woman.
how are you here? There's a lot going racing through my mind, but I'm like, okay, what do we do? Let's go upstairs. Let's take a look. And I'm literally walking on top of at least 6 to 8 inches of just
Garbage.
Correct, yeah.
Amazon boxes. Like, so she said, I need to get this place emptied. I'm paying the monthly on it. I just want to sell it. I don't know what to do. I've never seen it like this. He stopped inviting me over.
Yeah.
Like all these things. So uncovering like his story while excavating everything and taking it out and finding out she didn't know all of the secrets that he had. That caused him to self-exit. That was like my most powerful one. We got the house empty in 2 weeks, or the unit empty in 2 weeks. But and she got it completely turned around, sent me pictures just the other day. I got it on the market. She's so happy. But the story, being able to impact someone's victory like that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that sometimes we underestimate the amount of emotional space we need to hold for grieving. And when you compound that with now I have to go through all the things, it's worth seeking some professional
Yeah.
help or opinions on
Yeah.
navigating that so that you can grieve, right?
Mhm.
I
My
often-
parents passed. I don't want to go through the stuff. I want to
Yeah.
hire that out because I
Yeah.
want to grieve.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to that point, I offered death doulas
Yeah.
that are in our industry that we meet at these events.
Mhm.
She refused. She turned them down. She said maybe later, which just
Mhm.
told me her way of grieving is going through his stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we know how that is. You're just setting aside actual grieving,
Yeah.
which was sad, but she got through it, and it's again just the impact that we all have when
Mhm.
we're in this industry.
Yeah.
As menial as it may seem, or how
Yeah.
small, it's just cleaning out a bunch of
Mhm.
garbage and
Yeah.
throwing it away. But or if it's assisting or getting people into a assisted living spot because they're so overwhelmed and they don't know, or they're too they have their fear of judgment from the people around them, their families, and so they reach out and they say, I need help finding a place. It's just so impactful what we do.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
And on that note too, how can people get in touch with you for services? What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah.
A bottle, note in a bottle.
Send it on.
Just
Put it in the river.
That
Mic
would
is
be.
Oh, it did.
yeah.
They can call us direct, which is on our
Okay.
651-504
Yeah.
4040, and we have a 24-hour hotline. So that anybody in any situation, transitional care units usually are the ones that use that the most. But 651-504-4040,
Google.
Google Caring Transitions,
Mhm.
and it'll automatically populate based on their zip code that
Sure.
they're in, because there's multiple owners.
Mhm.
But yeah, those are the easiest two ways.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming on
Yeah.
today.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
been
Thank
an
you guys
honor
for
to have you
having
with
us.
us, so I really
Yeah.
appreciate
I
it.
appreciate
And
you.
I've learned lots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I appreciate you guys so much for the opportunity and just to be able to speak on these really important topics. And what you guys are doing as a whole with this podcast is just
Tremendous.
so powerful for our industry, for listeners to just gather more
Mhm.
information in the senior space and learn more about all the different components that go into
Yeah.
aging. This is a very difficult
Mhm.
process to navigate resources. And so the
Yeah.
fact that you guys are putting this out in the open for people to learn is incredible. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank
Seniors
you.
don't
Thank
know.
you.
The adult children don't know, and
Yep.
what you guys are doing.
I always say you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
That's right.
What
True.
you don't know.
Yep.
And so having this available is huge, and we're going to absolutely tell our clients, when we do events, please check you guys out. Check out the podcast.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you.
And
You're welcome.